The FBI and DEA stormed a facility tied to a foreign embassy in Chicago and walked out with suspects, cash, and drugs. That's not routine policing. That's a calculated risk with global consequences. The number that matters first: 106 arrests. In the next minutes, we'll break down why federal agents believed they could cross that line, the specific intelligence that greenlit the raid, and how the US justified it under law despite diplomatic protections. If you thought an embassy-linked office was off limits, wait until you hear the loophole and the mistake that exposed the operation. Before we move on, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and like the video. An office door carried a foreign flag and a glossy welcome placard, but it never appeared on the State Department's protected facilities list. That mismatch didn't just raise eyebrows. It unlocked everything. If a site claims diplomatic aura without the legal backing, agents ask why. When the address also sits in the stream of cash and chemicals feeding the Midwest drug market, the flag becomes a breadcrumb, not a shield. Agents first mapped the flow, not the storefront. Bank reports flagged deposits split into sub-$10,000 fragments across strip mall remittance shops and boutique importers. Those funds pointed to a Chicago suite rented by a consular outreach group that hosted visa assistance nights, scholarship briefings, and trade briefings. On paper, harmless. In practice, shipments tagged as solvents and lab reagents hopped from coastal ports to a warehouse network, then passed through couriers who visited the same suite after hours. Controlled buys linked pills and powder to a supply chain with Chinese origin precursor lots. Court-ordered wiretaps captured logistics chatter about kits, blue drums, and count days, layered over Mandarin and English code. None of that required stepping foot inside a protected room. It required patience and receipts. The legal tripwire sat in the fine print. The Vienna Convention shields mission premises that the State Department formally recognizes. Not every room a foreign-linked nonprofit rents downtown is a commercial lease. Slapping liaison on a door or flying a small flag in a hallway doesn't transform real estate into inviolable territory. Mislabeling confuses property managers and even patrol officers. But in court, it dissolves. Agents needed certainty, so they cross-checked the foreign missions list, consular lot numbers, and landlord records. The address never graduated to protected status. Breadcrumbs turned to threads. Banks filed suspicious activity reports for structured cash. Customs manifests showed recurring consignments of aniline derivatives and reagents consistent with fentanyl synthesis, routed through shell vendors that invoiced from the same building. A controlled delivery in a different state revealed packaging slips that listed a Chicago cultural contact email. Under a wire order, a handler discussed moving half the boxes after a community event. Aligning with the suite's public calendar, technology narrowed the cast. Geo-fenced warrants around the suite's evening hours produced a pool of devices that appeared only during cash handoffs. Tower dumps from 3 adjacent blocks shrank the list further. One burner number stood out. It pinged near the freight forwarder on the day a container cleared, then called a cultural liaison line tied to the suite within minutes. That cross-traffic suggested the admin layer touched the shipments directly, not as a passive tenant. Interagency fusion made the case coherent. DEA diversion specialists broke down chemical codes and supplier histories. FBI counterintelligence analysts traced foreign mission ties and influence fronts without tipping off actual diplomats. Homeland Security investigations pulled trade data, vessel itineraries, and consignee anomalies. The task force built a matrix of names, devices, shipments, deposits, and late-night badge-ins from the building's access logs. Before any door moved, the checklist ran long. Agents consulted the State Department to confirm the address and any pending status changes. OJ's Office of International Affairs reviewed the plan for treaty pitfalls. The team mapped the floor plate. Which rooms the outreach group leased, which subtenants occupied, and which areas remained common. They drafted a protocol to stop at the threshold of any space discovered to be protected. A magistrate judge signed narrowly scoped warrants aimed at non-immunized rooms, with a kill switch clause to halt if a protected office appeared. The final push came from a confidential source at a logistics firm who handed over serials matching previously seized precursor drums to invoices routed through the Chicago office. Surveillance teams watched cash drop-offs the night before. With the cause set and the order inked, the risk moved from statute books to embassies, and the clock began to run. They felt insulated because one line on an internal checklist said, "Treated as protected." That single assumption turned a rented suite into a no-go zone for anyone who didn't know the registry had never been updated. Then a paperwork mismatch surfaced. Old address listed, new address missing, and the glow around the door became a beacon. The aura worked until the documents didn't match. The cover played soft and safe. Weeknights brought cultural seminars, language classes, and alumni mixers. Weekends rotated trade showcases and education fairs. Those events gave couriers reasons to hover without drawing eyes. Flyers promised scholarships and export guidance, while back rooms handled deposit slips and schedules. Exchange program brochures sat next to folders from chambers of commerce. When shipments moved, the timing slid into the calendar. A call after a lecture, a pickup after a performance, a courier leaving with a tote that looked like event gear. Public diplomacy props hid practical logistics. They built layers around the money and chemicals. Couriers rotated by week, paid in cash, and met away from the building to count. Shipments split across carriers and arrived labeled as lab reagents, diluted across different ports and weeks. Invoices ran through small vendors tied to the outreach group by email domains and shared contact numbers. A truck would deliver equipment samples. Then a separate van would ferry educational materials. The language stayed bland across bills of lading and packing slips. The operation thrived on being ordinary on paper. The building itself became part of the shield. Property managers treated the tenant as special, citing supposed diplomatic status in hallway chatter and in memos to guards. Security logged fewer incidents for that floor and waved guests through after hours with minimal checks. When late-night badge-ins spiked, no one asked for justification because the tenant's brand implied consequences. Hands off became the default. Their confidence came from a database entry that never caught up. The old site appeared on a foreign mission registry, and someone assumed the protection traveled with the name, not the bricks. Internal notes copied that assumption forward. Staff told newcomers to treat the new suite like the old one. Even when mail still reached the former address, no one fixed the reference. The comfort came from paperwork inertia. They trusted encrypted apps and thought that ended the trail. It didn't. Metadata drew patterns. Messages peaked after evening events. Devices clustered near the freight corridor, and delivery windows aligned with badge pings. The building's access control system stamped a repeat rhythm: Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, while ride-hail histories showed the same start and end points within 10-minute bands. The network talked in code, but their clocks spoke plainly. They almost had a crash early. Months before the raid, a patrol unit stopped a courier for a minor violation. He raised a photocopied consular liaison card and a letterhead printout, and the stop wrapped fast. The report closed without escalation, reinforcing the belief that a laminated rectangle could close doors. The unraveling started far from Chicago. A West Coast customs team tagged a lot of reagents for irregular documentation. Lot numbers looped back to the Midwest via a freight forwarder. The same week, a bank's suspicious activity report flagged structured deposits tied to a contact who staffed the outreach desk. Two streams met: physical goods and money patterns, both pointing to the same suite. The final cut came from a tiny signature nobody expected. Agents pulled shipping manifests and found a printer serial watermark that matched documents produced in the office. The admin layer wasn't just nearby. It marked the paperwork that guided contraband. With that link, the cover collapsed. Warrants executed. Doors opened. 106 people in custody. Cash bundled, chemicals logged, phones buzzed in embassies while evidence teams weighed and cataloged. And the real work shifted from hallways to briefing rooms. Diplomatic symbols can nudge perceptions, but the statute is binary. Either a site holds recognized inviolability, or it doesn't. When intelligence threads a non-protected address to precursor drums, cache patterns, and device traffic, the shield drops and the warrant speaks. That is the line. Watch the docket and State Department readouts. If expulsions roll, you'll see tit for tat. If counter-sanctions appear, trade desks will feel it. If indictments land, Discovery will map the network's admin spine in black and white. Operations like this don't only capture currency and chemicals. They redraw where policing ends and geopolitics begins, and the next filing sets the tone.